Everybody was so proud of me.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Patrick MacFarlane. Patrick MacFarlane is the host of Liberty Weekly at the Libertarian Institute. I'm sure you all know who he is. And he's a really, really great dude. So I asked Patrick to come on because he's been doing a lot of work on China and looking at the propaganda surrounding China, in the Uyghurs especially. And leave it to me and Patrick that we can't stay on topic. We went all over the place. We talk technocracy, we talk China, we talk all kinds of stuff. We even talk a little bit of music in the beginning. So I hope you really enjoy this episode with Patrick. If you or someone you know is an entrepreneur or a small business owner with need for administration tasks to be done, but you don't have the capacity to hire someone full-time yet, think about my wife, the beautiful Biltong Queen, Beatrix Berger. And if you need some assistance, even if it's just one or two tasks, just shoot me an email at tommysalmons@gmail.com. She does QuickBooks and paychecks and transcripts and scheduling and email and all sorts of good stuff. She worked for the Hornberg campaign doing the administration work for him. She's done some transcripts for Pete Quinones, and she's just kind of all around done some volunteer work here and there. So give me a shout, tommysalmons@gmail.com. Thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. And remember, if you'd like to get this podcast without the advertisements, you can become a patron at patreon.com/TDSalmons, or you can subscribe for $5 a month or $40 a year to my Substack at tommysalmons.com. Enjoy the show. Okay, we got Patrick MacFarlane from Liberty Weekly and the new show. What is it, Sonic Insurrections?
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Hell yeah.
I started this new heavy metal show I was going to ask you on.
I'm going to come on. I'm going to listen. That's the first thing I got to do. I got to listen. And, you know, I'm horrible about listening to other podcasts. I always apologize to everybody. I'm like, dude,
Same.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up with just like my own podcast at the moment. I'm trying to keep up with all the information I'm trying to shove into my own fucking head, you know, whether it's on homesteading or whatever. I'm trying to keep all that shit straight in my own head, but I have not gotten to that. But I do plan on listening to it this weekend because Beatrix will really love it because, you know, she's a big metalhead too.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Cataclysm's her favorite band. So
cool. Yeah. I mean, like, I think if you're a libertarian, I think there's stuff for there, you know, there's stuff for you there too. Like I did like the Slayer and Nazi imagery. So I kind of talked about Jeff Henneman and World War II and stuff. Yeah. And then I covered Lamb of God's Ashes of the Wake, and I talked about Iraq War II because that whole album is about Iraq War II mostly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, badass. Yeah, I saw the one that you had done one on Slayer, and I was like, oh, I gotta fucking listen to this. This is gonna be good. You know what? And I'm gonna, you know, be considered not real metal right now, but I hate fucking Slayer.
You hate Slayer?
They had one good fucking song. That was it. One good song. They're fucking the most overrated band ever in the history of fucking metal.
I will say, you know, the 90s era, I'm not
Blasphemy. Blasphemy.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, you know, Show No Mercy. I really like, well, you know, Raining Blood is really good. But
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Raining Blood was the only good song they came out with.
Now,
that was the most unique song that they wrote. Everything else was like, yeah, I've heard this 5 billion times.
They're iconic. They're iconic.
Yeah,
I can't say they're the first though. You know, like,
you know what? If I had ever seen them live, I might feel differently. But I never saw them live. Yeah. But you know, just hearing them, their albums, I was just like, all right, like whatever. Like I'd rather listen to Pantera.
Oh, see, I don't like Pantera.
Oh yeah, but I'd rather listen to Pantera because Pantera was like, yeah, we're gonna be the baddest motherfuckers on the block, and there ain't shit you can do about it. So let's go. You know, especially like you watch that fucking video of them in Moscow, the domination video. Jesus Christ, dude! You want to talk about fucking setting some people free, man?
Oh,
God
I don't know.
damn!
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, you got to watch it live in Moscow.
Okay.
I'll send it to you after this.
Okay.
It's Domination live in Moscow. That is like the best live video ever recorded. There's like hundreds of thousands of people. Dimebag nails the fucking solo, just rips it, and it's just so awesome. Yeah, I get goosebumps. I'm just talking about it. I'm getting goosebumps, dude. Like, it's so beautiful because, you know, you're talking about this was what, 1991, 1990? The wall hadn't come down long before that. Right?
Oh, yeah. Shit.
So,
Cool.
this was some of their first experience of that culture coming into the Soviet Union. And you had 100,000 people in Moscow for this fucking, it's a sea of fucking
really
people.
Cool.
It's fucking amazing, dude. It's so brilliant.
Yeah, I had Carmen Alexi on talking about. I talked to you about this last on our Childerberg episode, but she was grew up in communist Romania and escaped, ran away when she was 18. But she was talking about, you know, how people would smuggle in records from the West and they would sell them on the black market, and that's so cool. I just thought it was so. You got to know that everybody in Russia, in the former Soviet Union, had heard Pantera. Well, where the fuck did they hear it? Right?
Exactly. Well, it's like, what was that? I think it was Michael Malice was talking about how the North Koreans were smuggling in makeup from South Korea, and they were smuggling in soap operas from South Korea too, and they were like doing their makeup like they saw the people on the soap operas doing their makeup and shit like that. Yeah.
It's cool that no matter how totalitarian a society can get and how brainwashed the people are, there's certain things that they know that you know, the programming can only go so far.
Right. You know, I don't know if you've ever read it. Derek Bros wrote a book.
Yeah.
It's called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. Well, the first half of the book is Derek Bros writing, and the second half of the book is a Konkin book that was never finished, and it was called Counter Economics, and he's going through the history of how counter economics was used in like Cambodia and in the Soviet Union and all this shit, and it's really cool. You could probably find just the Konkin portion online.
Yeah.
But
does he have it? I mean, I'm sure he has it like available for crypto or something like that.
Derek Bros? Oh, I assume so. Yeah, I assume so. I think I bought it on Amazon, unfortunately. But
I remember listening. I'll forgive you for that. I remember listening to Derek Bros very early in my liberty journey, and I remember being like, "Oh, this guy's too militant for me. Like, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet."
Yeah, right. No, you know what? I ran across his. I guess I had. I don't know. I don't remember when I discovered the conscious resistance.
Yeah.
But it was after his mayoral run. And see, here's the thing: was he was running this this radio show out of Houston the entire time I lived in Houston, but I wasn't politically active or involved in any way. Otherwise, I'd probably would have tried to hook up with the dude while I was still living in Houston. But I had found him after I'd moved out to Orange. We left Houston in 2016. I'd been trying to get out of that godforsaken goddamn fucking city for a while. I hated that place. I hate cities though. But yeah, we left in 2015 or 16. 16. Yeah, it was 16. So, and I knew, see, I had already determined back then that it was necessary to get out of the cities, get out of this environment. Even before I was politically really super politically aware, I was like, I got to get out of this environment. I got to get away from the cities. I need to get out to the country, and I need to be growing my own food and taking care of myself, because this shit isn't going to end well. Like, I could already see it, you know? Yeah. And that was before learning all the libertarian philosophy, you know?
Yeah. Well, fertile ground, you know, for these ideas. And it's funny how these ideas can hit you at just the right time.
Right.
And some people have more like a window of opportunity than others. Like you and I think, you know, you're already thinking in that way. But yeah, we lived in the Twin Cities. I lived there from 2011 until 2018.
Yeah.
And we lived in St. Paul on Summit. This probably doesn't mean anything to you, but it's the part of St. Paul that's kind of by where the cathedral is. Like the governor's mansion is on Grand and Summit, in the area there.
I've never been. I've been to St. Paul for like delivering material. I've never been to that area though. I was more out in your industrial area. You know?
It's pretty close to I-94. Like I-94 runs through both cities. But I mean, our block had windows that were busted out and like stores that were looted there. Yeah. And I know it was only in certain parts of the city, but that happened a year after we left, a couple years after we left. So it was you know, our friends still live there. They had stuff happen to them. So
yeah. Well, and this is all due to the Chinese Communist Party smuggling in their ideology into our country. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how we're going to transition. We're going to make shit up. We're going to make shit up just like Luke Radowski and Temple.
Well, you know, like now I've gotten more into it. It seems like James Corbett, I just interviewed him about this.
I listened to that today. Yes, it was a very good interview.
I appreciate that, man. It was. I'm pretty proud of that one. And it's like this. The John Birchers and McCarthy in the 50s and 60s, they really, really were afraid of the Red Menace, China, you know, and in a way they advocated turning the United States into a fascist state to get rid of the communist influences. I guess that doesn't necessarily mean that there were no Marxist professors in the United States, you know. So it's like, it's so hard to discern the truth because, you know, I'm sure there is a certain amount of influence that China has in the United States, and stuff like that. But yes, I get what you're saying. You know, it's like the BLM was all China.
Well, what was that Putin said the other day? Are we to blame for BLM now or what?
Right. Yeah. I love how, like, it seems like Putin is red-pilled. Like, I know that in secret, like, the U.S. government is probably is red-pilled because they're the ones, you know, they're the Matrix. But Putin seems like he has the knowledge of, like, a shit poster.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, the fact, what I figured out a couple of years ago was like, okay, Russia Today, yeah, it's state-owned propaganda by Russia. But it's hard to argue whenever they're on the right side of history this whole time.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And they're actually putting out the facts. I'm sorry, you know, but it just happens to be on their side at this point in time. There's nothing, I mean, it doesn't mean I agree with the way that they govern their society. It just means their news agencies happen to be accurate.
Exactly. Yeah. And I dub this the anti-mainstream media bias. Like, you know how there's all these logical fallacies, but it's like, I'm so conditioned to believe that mainstream media is wrong on everything, but that's not true. I mean, just ask someone like Kyle Anzalone, our buddy at the Libertarian Institute. Like, sometimes the mainstream media gets stories right, and you can't, you know, you still have to read Reuters to figure out what's going on. And you just have to train yourself to deal with the propaganda. But sometimes CNN does good pieces on the genocide in Yemen, you know. So it's hard to like go through all the news, and you just got to really be careful. And that's hard to do because you get swept up in stuff.
Well, no, and it's, I mean, look at what my day consists of. You know, I get up at, 6 in the morning. I walk my dog for 45 minutes. I get in my truck. I try to squeeze in a news story before I drink my coffee and brush my teeth. and get on the fucking road. You know what I'm saying? And then I drive for 10 and a half hours. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to listen to news for 10 and a half hours a day. I don't even listen to podcasts for 10 and a half hours a day. I'm listening to things that I can try to utilize in my daily life, right? And so it's not the priority for me to listen and try to figure out like what's real and not real. And then I stop my day, you know, at 7 o'clock at night. And with a 30-minute break or an hour break in between, maybe I squeeze in an interview, walk my dog, and fucking jump back in the truck and drive for another 4 or 5 hours before my day ends. And then I might have another interview that night. Or I might just be like, fuck, man, I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to talk to my wife tonight, just chill out, maybe read a book. You know, I got, well, I don't have any books in here right now. I took them out yesterday. But, yeah, read something like, you know, do electric, you know, what is it? Do electric sheep dream of whatever.
Oh,
Android's dream of electric sheep. Read some shit like that I can relax and kind of kick back on, play on Twitter a little bit and go to sleep. You know, that's like my fucking day, you know? Yeah. So keeping up with the news cycle it's damn near impossible for a working person. You know what I'm saying? Unless your entire job boils around keeping up with that news cycle. And so that's why I wanted to have you on, is because I don't know what's going on with this China shit. I've heard all the stories, Uyghur genocide, this, raping women, this, that, and the other, you know, like, you know, forced gender reassignment. You'll get that joke. But
you do.
but the fact of the matter is, like, we've been lied into every war since this fucking country was ever fucking, you know, established. It's like, are they just lying to us about more shit just so they can have another war? And is this a different kind of war? Is Tim Pool right about this? About the 5th generational warfare, about it all being cyber war. It's not going to be fought with guns and ships and, you know, all that. It's just non-traditional, like, cyber warfare. Is this what we're dealing with? Are we in the middle of World War III at the moment? Don't even know it, because hot war today means something different than it did in the 40s.
I think there's an element of that. And I think in the ramping up of tensions, we will see that. It could be true that, you know, before a hot war breaks out, we'll see a lot more of this escalation in terms of, you know, fifth generational warfare. But if that were true, I don't think that the U.S. military would be, you know, the politicians in the foreign policy establishment would be talking about preparing for a traditional war, for a real kinetic war. So I think there will be a lot of different degrees to it. Space is one of them. Cyber war is another one. Infrastructure, that kind of stuff. But they are preparing for a real kinetic war, I do believe. The possibility of it. Now, I don't want to be an alarmist and say the sky's falling, but it's really serious.
Yeah, it feels like we're on the verge of a civil conflict combined with a world conflict. And I don't think in the modern age, I don't think with where America is sitting right now culturally, that a world conflict is going to be the tie that binds the way they think it will. I think it will actually further divide the nation.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I do think that personally, like the conspiracy theorist side of me, I really do believe that world depopulation is part of the agenda, if you could say that. And when you're talking about these things, you got to be careful with terms, because I don't think that there's like an agenda. You know, there's not like people in a room like plotting things. It's just like different factions or different interest groups usually have interests that are overlining.
Right.
And they will, you know, they'll take advantage of situations that happen in the world that they usually don't plan to advance a certain agenda that they have, certain ends that they'd like to meet. but yeah, man, I do think that deep, like, global depopulation is part of that agenda, and whether that's through war, whether that's through transhumanism, or whether that's through civil conflict or strife, or I don't know, COVID. So
Yeah. Well, and I almost asked a stupid question. I almost asked, has any country ever been involved in a civil war and an external conflict at the same time? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, every country that the United States has invaded over the last
right?
30 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well,
that's-
I'll tell you what, like, this COVID-19 situation, especially the Wuhan lab leak, and that has been something that's on my agenda to do a deep dive on. But there are a lot of people. Dave DeCamp made this point in response to my interview with Corbett. He said, you know, we got like white pilled kind of towards the end and talked about things that we're happy about, and a lot of people were red pilled in the COVID situation. But Dave pointed out, and I think he's absolutely right here, is that he's afraid the people being red pilled, these newly red pilled people, all of their animosity is being turned towards China right now, because the whole narrative is that, well, this is China's fault somehow, whether they made it, whether they were negligent and let the COVID-19 leak out, it's all China's fault. So China is responsible for your politicians locking you down. And that's absolute bullshit.
Right. Well, yeah, and I made a joke a while back, probably last year sometime, and I said, is it a coincidence that the Democrats adopted blue and the Republicans adopted red as their permanent colors when the neocons came to power?
Yeah.
But it could just be that they knew this whole red pill scenario was going to come up and that people would automatically go, well, I'm red pilled, I must be a Republican.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I do feel like I have to back up what I said about global depopulation, though, because the fact is, you know, and I'd point everyone towards James Corbett's work, like How Big Oil Conquered the World and Why Big Oil Conquered the World.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just coming from my ass. It's coming from, like, the World Economic Forum itself and these people who are in positions of power.
Richard Grove's done a lot of good work on this, too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard you talking about it at Childerberg, too, at least, like, the debanking, right?
Yeah. Well,
cutting people off from financial services.
Yeah, well, I think it's a different, I don't think it's necessarily depopulation. I think it's more of severing ties to certain cultures. So I think it's going to be more like, let's take the Amish, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of them around here.
Right. And so I think they're going to be completely, like, cut out of, like, society. Like, that's what I think is going to happen. And I think the way it's going to happen is they're just going to be choked off financially.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have the choice. You can live your own life and be the savages out of Brave New World. Right.
I was just going to say that, motherfucker.
Right.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
Or you can keep up with the Joneses and you can be part of the advanced culture.
Yeah.
You see? And I think that's how it's going to be done. I think they're just going to cut people like me completely out of the loop, where I won't even be able to have a podcast. I won't be able to get, you know, basic necessities, electricity, things like that, because I'm unwilling to even discuss potentially cooperating with.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I totally agree with you, at least on the cutting people off element. I do suspect, like, this global depopulation, whether it will be, you know, through some kind of war, which would definitely cause it, or, and the reason I say that is because this whole thing with Maurice Strong and from Corbett's, like, Why Big Oil Conquered the World, is all of these meetings. You know, there was some, I wish I had the note in front of me right now, but he talks about this conference that happened in Colorado, and there was a whistleblower who filmed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you can find that video online, but it's all the, like, the Rockefellers and the Morgans and, you know, all these connected people. I'm being loose with my names here, but all these connected people openly talking about the world being populated by what they call cannon fodder.
Right.
And so getting rid of them and dealing with them. And that's a lot about what this global warming eco-fascism is about.
Right. But this is not why we were going to do this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. That's all right. It just clicked. I was like, yeah, this isn't what we were going to talk about. You know, people might be interested in this. Maybe we should do a podcast on this. But we are actually.
But I think it fits in with the whole China thing, though. I think,
yeah, it does to an effect because, as Corbett said, that's the model.
Right.
Right. That's what they look at. The way that China has gained such totalitarian control over their society. I mean, I read a report a while back that China could, with AI technology, once they identify you, like from the time they put the alert on you to the time that the police identify you via facial recognition and have you in custody, it's like 5 minutes.
Really?
Something like that. It's some absurd. You're like, what the fuck? And then we had this. Then there was this town in Florida. Did you hear about this town in Florida? That was they had the police department utilizing some sort of AI technology where they were going through all the citizens of the towns, like social media posts. And they were going preemptively and arresting the people for crimes that they were considering they might commit.
Yeah. So you were talking about Philip K. Dick earlier. That's Minority Report, man.
Yeah.
I think that's Philip K. Dick, but
pretty sure it was. Yeah.
In the way that China ties into it is that, as Corbett was saying, China is what the globalists are. That's an overused term, but I think what they're really trying to do is the people who direct a certain policy agenda, they're trying to take the best of both systems, the best of the corporate crony capitalist system with its supercharged fascist military state, with the military industrial complex, and combine it with the totalitarianism of the Chinese red state, and they're trying to get a system with the best of both worlds from their perspective.
Right. Yeah. But okay, so when it comes to the propaganda about China, when it comes to this war propaganda, and I mean, my tendency is to not believe it. Like immediately, I'm like, I don't know. I made a joke when Biden took office. I said, if Biden wants to be based, he'll make a Uyghur his fucking ambassador to China.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So, but because like my whole thing is, I'm not sure that I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think China is perfectly capable of doing these things. All right. It's kind of like the United States is perfectly capable of pulling off 9/11. Right. But do I think that's what is going on? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's to the extent. Let's take the white genocide in South Africa, for instance. Yeah. Like everybody's heard about that, right? Well, that's a good distraction, okay? And the reason that's a good distraction is because there were a lot of white people fucking killed. A lot of white farmers are being murdered in South Africa, still to this day. Problem is, it's not just white farmers. It's farmers, right? So there are black farmers being murdered too. So this is a perfect cover for communist ideology, which is what the ANC is. There's a full documentary out there on the development of the ANC training with the Viet Cong in the fucking 80s up in Zimbabwe and northern African countries because they are all run out of South Africa, right? And this is interesting to me because Beatrix is South African. So this is the only reason I know this type of shit.
Well, I had no idea about this.
Yeah. All right. So what they've done is when the ANC took over, they then started a new group called the Economic Freedom Fighters. It wasn't really a new group, but they propped them up, right? So this is the Economic Freedom Fighters is an openly communist organization that's pulling to the left, right? Kind of like, imagine like Antifa here, right? Yeah. But it's a political party, all right? And then you have the DA, who is the traditional apartheid government that are the other political party fighting against the ANC. And they're trying to pull them to the right, okay? So the DA is no longer stands against apartheid. But the EFF and the ANC have done such a good job of propagandizing the population that the black population, which South Africa is 70% black. The black population in South Africa believe that if they vote DA, that they're voting for apartheid again, that they're going to bring it back, right? So it would be like, it's kind of like whenever the Democrats say that the Republicans are trying to bring back slavery. You know, they want to put you back in chains, you know, type shit. It's that type of fucking deal, right? Well, so they don't like the ANC, but they're afraid to vote for the DA. And the EFF is so far off the plantation, they won't vote for them. So you got this slow roll of communism coming in through the ANC, all right? So what they've done is they've employed these young, angry kids, and not really employed. They've just kind of weaponized the propaganda to such an extent. You get kind of like what you saw earlier, like last year, where they're burning down buildings and shit like that. Yeah. Well, instead of burning down buildings, these young, angry kids that are unable to work for a living, cannot make any money, get out of the colleges, the universities as they call it over there, and they go and they attack these farms, and they're killing the landowners, right? It's not about the color of the person's skin. It's about the resources that the person has available, because this kid is 26 years old, and he's out there living in a shanty on the side of the road, starving. Right? Yeah. And I've seen these little shanty towns. Like, I've gone to South Africa. I've seen this shit. It's fucking crazy. And you're like, damn, they just build this shit anywhere? And it's like, yeah. And it's like their own little homestead, but they're not working the property or anything. These little shacks, these tin shacks built out of scrap metal that's found on the side of the road, pulled out of dumpsters and shit like that, are built, and they make these little villages. And then they create these gangs, and they go into town and they attack people that have money and resources. So these people are going onto these farmlands, and they're killing these farmers because they feel like the farmers are oppressing them because they're landowners. So the alt-right, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are some government agencies involved in this, might be a few three-letter agencies involved in perpetuating this talking point, are saying, oh, well, it's white farmers. Well, yeah, there's a lot of white people involved, because for decades, they were the ruling class of the apartheid state. But there are black farmers being killed too. Same thing happened in Zimbabwe. You saw the same thing. And now the president of Zimbabwe is begging farmers to come back to Zimbabwe because his people are starving, you know? And so you get this whole, this propaganda. It's so fed into, but it's fed into from the wrong point of view, right? It's kind of like you look at the United States, you look at BLM and Antifa, they're all like, oh, racism this, white supremacy that, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, no, it's a class struggle. This is not a race thing. This is a class thing, right? But they target them at the wrong thing in order to continue to gain power and influence. And that's what I'm concerned is going on in China, that they're targeting us at the Uyghur genocide. They're targeting us at this because they're continuing this rollout of this corporatocracy that China is becoming.
That's so interesting, because I remember I think it was 2016 or 2017, I was watching, that Lauren Southern documentary, Farmlands. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
And Stefan Maloney was talking about that too at the time. And I remember, it had that effect of making people, of kind of radicalizing like the alt-right. Well, I mean this pipeline to the alt-right. I think there's a lot of baggage with that term pipeline, but yeah. Um, in the same way with the Chinese Uyghur genocide issue, there is bad stuff happening. There are Uyghurs being put into re-education camps in a certain turn of phrase. So in the background, one thing to know about the Xinjiang region is that it is known as the frontier of China. In fact, I believe that's what the word Xinjiang means, is kind of like new frontier. And so the Uyghurs are kind of they're a Muslim population.
Aren't they a majority? Isn't that a majority Muslim region as well?
I believe so. Although the demographics have been changing because the Han Chinese are they're moving in a way, kind of colonizing the area.
Right.
I believe the Han population. I believe this. You'd have to, don't take my word for it, but it's been increasing. And so has the Uyghur population since 1950. It's grown from like 3 million to like 13 million, something like that. So, but what is happening is there's been a lot of terrorism that has happened in the Xinjiang region. And that is because the Uyghurs are ethnically and culturally very different from the Han Chinese. There are elements in there that would like to be autonomous. And of course, people who don't have power resort to terrorism to try and get power or to try and make noise. So what China really wants to do is to put their arm around the Uyghurs and to bring them closer to the Chinese government. Because, to be frank and very terse, China wants the Uyghurs to work in the factories. They don't want them to be a rural, uncontrollable people. They want to bring them into this technocratic state. They want to have their labor to pick cotton, incidentally, but also to work in the factories. So it doesn't make sense that the Chinese government would want to exterminate the Uyghurs because they need them to work, which is terse to say. And I owe this point to Scott Horton, and this is how I knew I was on the right track with this issue, because Scott called me up and he's like, God damn it, Patrick, you're absolutely right on this issue. And it doesn't make any sense that China would genocide the Uyghurs because they're working on this Belt and Road Initiative, which is a land-based trade corridor that they're trying to establish, going all across Asia and all the way to Portugal, essentially.
So do you think the Uyghurs that are being imprisoned, and I can only assume that it is a significant amount of them, just because the videos that are out there and the stories that I've heard, but do you think it's like just the troublemakers? Do you think it's like what do you think is happening with that? Because, as you said, it is happening. It's just like, to what extent is it occurring? Is really the question.
I think it's hard to say. From what I understand, the number 1 million plus has been thrown around a lot, but no conversation about this can really be complete without mentioning Adrian Zenz and his work. Adrian Zenz is a German sociologist, data miner, who's been writing all the reports that form the basis for these claims. And essentially, one of these reports, and I don't know if it's particularly Adrian Zenz or it's one of these Uyghur Congress think tanks. I wrote about this in my article, but the name is escaping me. But my article on the Libertarian Institute, essentially this claim saying that there's millions of Uyghurs in these camps is from a study that interviewed a total of 8 people, like 8 Uyghurs, to like kind of extrapolate and broadcast this. So I don't believe that it's more than 1 million people. And the Gray Zone, Max Blumenthal and Gareth Porter and others, Ben Norton, have done a lot of work on this. And they have an article that I'll send you the link to put in the show notes page about exactly how many Uyghurs are being imprisoned. But there is evidence, Moon of Alabama has written articles saying there is evidence that these people, some of them are here voluntarily. It really seems to me like it's a catch and release program. There are some people who are deemed enemies of the state who are being disappeared in a sense. But it's no worse than what we're doing to people in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like, and because I've heard people like try to compare it with Nazi Germany, and it really sounds more to me like the Chinese building the railroads in America in the 1800s.
That's a good comparison. Yeah.
That's kind of the like idea I get. And as brutal as these corporations and slave owners were with slaves at times, it doesn't serve their interest to be overly abusive. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You want to keep them just happy enough, just well enough fed to keep them working. Because if they all just stop working, then you have a bloodbath on your hand, and you're not covering that up.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, the comparison that I would make, and I got to be careful with this, but the comparison I would make would be, it's similar to the United States' treatment of American Indians, minus the Trail of Tears and minus the genocide. But what I'm talking about specifically is when they would take young Native American men and take them from their tribes and put them in re-education homes and cut their hair off. It is cultural, what do they call that? What's going on in Israel right now? It's culture, ethnic cleansing is what they call it. I think that is more akin to what's really happening. You have people with a way of life that is more rural. It's accustomed to having more children. They're taking that, they're trying to cleanse the Uyghurs of their ethnic heritage and trying to make them assimilate them into Chinese culture a bit more forcefully.
Yeah, it's an indoctrination program.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's
so it's like taking a 4-year-old and putting it in school for the next 15,000 hours.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, it's like, but moreover, like we have fish to fry here in the United States.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely the case. And you made the point. Well, I don't think it was in the Corbett interview. I think it was in one of your other podcasts. God, I listened to 2 of them today, so I kind of had some idea where you were coming from. You made the point that you're more worried about the U.S. because this is your government, and like you live under this government. And I think that's a decent point, and it's like Michael Malice says all the time. He's like, I don't think people that aren't worried about North Korea are bad people. I just think they look at it and say, they're way over there. What the fuck am I going to do about it?
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of my view on China. It's like, I'm so singularly focused on what difference can I make here, to influence something within the culture, right? That I don't even pay attention to foreign policy near as much as I did, like, even last year. Once COVID hit, it was kind of like I kind of lost my, addiction to foreign policy. I had been reading all kinds of shit on foreign policy, and then I was just kind of like, what the hell is this? Like, what the fuck's happening? And I was so oblivious to what was going on with COVID, man. It didn't even hit me until they had locked down the highways coming in from Louisiana into Texas.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is happening? Why are there cops everywhere? And it was like 2 days later, I was like, found out there were checkpoints to enter the state. And that's whenever I was like, okay, I need to stop reading all this shit. I need to pay attention to what's actually happening on the ground. So I have some sort of like, some way to like gain bearing in all of this and figure it out. And that's kind of what really changed my direction on my podcast. It went from talking a lot about history and theory and the atrocities of the United States government to saying, can we find a solution that every person can at least attempt to implement into their own lives and move forward with? But I've really neglected foreign policy and philosophy for that matter. I made a smart ass comment a while back, and I don't mean any disrespect to any podcasters that talk philosophy, because many of y'all are brilliant, but it's like, I don't see how this is going to help me. I get 5-10 minutes into the conversation, and I'm just like, I'm getting nothing out of this. How does this even apply, anymore? And so I can't even, I spend a lot of my time just reading and on farming. It's just homesteading. And that's what I'm like, okay, how do I make sure my kids are fed if the supply chain completely fucking breaks, goes way beyond what it is right now, and my kids need somewhere to go? I have the property to house my parents and my kids on, but how do I make sure that we're all fed, that we're all taken care of, And that's kind of like my goal,
That's a crazy thing to actually worry about. And I haven't actually worried about it until COVID happened, and I went out. I mean, I didn't panic buy, but I was like, okay, let's go to Sam's Club. Let's get a bunch of beans and rice and, all this stuff. Not overbuying, but just to be like, okay, well, we have enough to last a month or two if we need it. Right. But now, all the homesteading stuff, I wanted to start gardening and all that. I mean, it's cool, but, I got to tell you about this other more interesting part, Tommy, about this Chinese genocide.
Oh, yes. Let's go.
So I'm sure you're familiar with this if you listened or watched or read my stuff. This whole Falun Gong situation. So for the listeners who don't know, all of these accusations of organ harvesting, a lot of them stem from this group called Falun Gong. And Falun Gong is a spiritualist movement that started in China in the 1980s and 1990s. Their leader, they have a charismatic leader named Li Hongzhi. I don't speak Chinese, so apologize for the butchering the name. But so they were like the spiritualist group, and all of a sudden, the Chinese government, they didn't want anyone worshiping anything aside from communism. So they declared them enemies of the state. They did persecute them enough for Li Hongzhi and some of his followers to flee China and to come to the United States. So they did just that. Li Hongzhi came to New York City. He lived there for a while. He accumulated a bunch of practitioners who would practice with him. And Li Hongzhi he's an interesting character because he says a lot of like very batshit insane stuff about being able to read people's minds, being able to levitate and walk through walls, stuff that you've heard in other places from other charismatic leaders, shall I say. And he got a bunch of people together. Oh, he also said that aliens were invading the earth and like inhabiting people's minds and stuff. So he got all his practitioners together, and a lot of his practitioners got together and started certain media outlets that may be familiar to the audience. Namely, a little outlet called the Epoch Times, which became very famous in 2016 when it backed Donald Trump. And it started producing a lot of conservative boomer-con type content that a lot of conservatives were thirsty for because they're so radicalized against the mainstream media that they would glob on to anything that actually broadcasts conservative talking points. But essentially, Epoch Times and New Tang Dynasty it's also, you might have seen them on YouTube and the internet. They actually have news broadcasts with like newscasters. And they broadcast the viewpoints of people. Every
other advertisement I see on YouTube is of this fucking Epoch or Epic, however you pronounce it. Yeah. I turn on YouTube and I swear it's always the first one that pops out. Did you know that Biden, blah, 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 blah. Check out the Epic. It's like, oh my fucking God, dude. I don't even read your shit.
And also China's the devil. And that's their main bent.
No, so is this the guy that hooked up with Steve Bannon?
I don't know that chapter of the story.
Okay, because there was some Chinese billionaire that got ran out of China, and he hooked up with Steve Bannon, and Steve Bannon like launched his podcast from the dude's boat or some shit like that. Yeah, I don't really know the entire story. I remember hearing somebody talk about it. I want to say on Scott's show. I want to say that somebody Scott was interviewing a while back, but I don't quote me on that. But
so the first thing I pulled up is an NPR article talking about Falun Gong and Steve Bannon and the Trump era battle over internet freedom. So it looks like, Falun Gong is involved with Steve Bannon. See, this is what I was talking about with that anti-MSM bias earlier, is that sometimes the mainstream media does good reporting. And a lot of the bombshell reporting on this was done by, I think it was either the New York Times or was MSNBC. So there's an article that I linked to. But essentially, the Epic Times and NTD were started by Falun Gong members with seed money from God knows where. I assume it might be Falun Gong. And enough so that Li Hongzhi has gone to Epic Times and NTD meetings with the entire staff, and he's given speeches that you can find on Falun Gong's website, telling them to infiltrate the media, essentially, and to demonize communist China. And so the reason why they're not trustworthy is not because they're crazy, I'm editorializing here, but not because they're crazy religious fanatics or that they're part of some kind of religious movement. But the reason they're untrustworthy is because they say what their motivation is, and that's to make China look bad and to fight the Chinese Communist Party. So they are the ones behind all this organ harvesting stuff, and they've always been the ones behind it. The guy I'm thinking of,
I just found it. Guo Wengui.
Okay.
It's GuoWenGui. That's the Chinese businessman that is like financing Steve Bannon.
Okay. Has he been involved with the Epic Times, I wonder?
I don't know. If everybody wants to listen to me read, I'll read through this.
Yeah, go ahead, but put your mic up.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Microsoft News. So this says, the report provided in advance to the Washington Post details a network that Graphica says amplifies the views of Guo, a Chinese real estate developer who's associated with former Trump White House advisor Steve K. Bannon, became a focus of news coverage last year after Bannon was arrested aboard Guo's yacht on federal fraud charges. Oh, so when Bannon was arrested, he was on the yacht. I knew there was something going on with the yacht. Graphica, I don't know if that's... It doesn't say anything about Epoch. I'm not seeing Epoch anywhere in here. Click that link, see where that brings me. Graphica.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's possible. I don't know quite as much about that, but...
All right, so their clients include ESPN, Google, everybody's in bed with Google, NFL, Pinterest, Facebook, academic institutions, human rights groups, public institutions. Hey, look, they're financed by DARPA. That's nice to know. So no, it says here channel partners. Etronics. Wait, motherfucker. I was reading that. Health Communications, True Ideation, and V6. I don't see anything about Epoch. So, doesn't mean that there's not some link somewhere. I don't see it at first look at their website. So much of the focus of my podcast is to point out abuses of power and how bad things have gotten and the direction in which we're heading as a society, and it can be a real black pill. I've partnered up with Richard Grove to offer my listeners an opportunity to sign up to his Autonomy Course. The Autonomy Course is designed for people looking for solutions, people that want to shape their own future, people that are not willing to be at the behest of large corporations or the United States government or the banking system. The Autonomy Course is designed for those of you who wish to have complete control of the reins of your life, who are looking to be successful, to thrive and not just survive, to provide for your family by utilizing your existing skills and learning how to market and sell those skills in order to be your own boss, or learn new skills in order to leverage that into a new career opportunity. So if there's a job out there you've been trying to get or you've been wishing you could get, but you just don't have the skills for it, the Autonomy Course is the place for you to start, to learn how to land that position, to learn how to market yourself better, to gain confidence, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded people that will encourage you and help you along the way. So use my affiliate links and go check out the Autonomy Course. It could be right for you.
It looks like he was interviewed. I'll edit a lot of this out just to smooth it out for us. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Because when you started talking about that, I was like, wait, they're attached to Epoch. Well, I know there was that businessman that was attached to... Okay, here he is. Guo says he told Roos, who's the guy who wrote this article, or they're talking about in this article, he's a journalist for the New York Times, that the Epoch Times is excellent and brilliant.
Wow.
He also praised the Epoch Times for its fearless reporting in Hong Kong in the face of CCP intimidation. I respect them very much. Epoch Times is standing in the streets of Hong Kong with their cameras directly pointing to the CCP live streaming. Do you think that's easy? Guo said. He told Roos. Guo also questioned Roos, why don't you go after the CCP? What kind of mainstream media are you? Okay. So this is like kind of like, this article is kind of a takedown of the New York Times here.
I see. Okay.
There's a video and a YouTube video of this interaction apparently, but the Epoch Times, just to give you an idea, they don't seem like they're friendly with Guo. China's corruption up close, the case of Guo Wangui, or Gui or whatever. Guo Wangui, Chinese regime deploys spies. High-profile Chinese whistleblower urges Chinese billionaire Guo Wangui holds photocopies of documents allegedly on Chinese National Security Council request to send more spies to the United States. Chinese billionaire dissident Guo Wangui, exiled Chinese billionaire sheds light, and that's about the spying again. So they don't seem, I mean, they have a couple of like articles where it seems like they're talking bad about him, and a couple of articles where it seems like they're kind of lifting him up. So I don't know what the stance or the relationship is, if any exists. But okay.
Well, I haven't looked into this as closely, but the whole situation with Hong Kong is definitely, there's like U.S. State Department fingerprints all over it. And, thank God that we have Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams right now doing the Liberty Report, because they have been so rock solid on so many things. And it's an embarrassment of riches that we have Ron Paul doing a daily show, and I try and watch it as much as I can, but he's been so good on foreign policy issues. I remember specifically, and I've looked this video up. He had David Stockman on, and him and Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul during the Hong Kong stuff when that was going on, just obliterated all of it. And we're like, this is the U.S. State Department. The U.S. State Department gives so much money to all these pro-democracy demonstrators in Hong Kong.
Right.
And I remember I don't know if you remember this, there were videos of the Chinese regime coming in with buses and tearing families apart in Hong Kong. And there was something that seemed fishy about it to me. So I don't know if that was propaganda, films. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that. No, I know there was a lot going on with Hong Kong. A year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I actually have a friend of mine who went to Hong Kong, and he has a friend that lives in Hong Kong, and both of them have agreed to come onto the podcast at some point in time.
Oh, cool. But
it's a matter of disguising their voices for their security.
Yeah.
Because my buddy goes over there a lot, and so neither of them want to get in any trouble. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm unwilling to go any further into detail than that, but because I don't want to get him in any shit. But so,
that's some real journalism right there.
Yeah. So, well, he's not even a journalist. He's just a guy that travels over there all the time.
No, I'm saying if you have them on,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it might still happen. I haven't talked to him about it in a while, but I'm still in contact with him regularly. So,
yeah.
But we had talked about it, and I don't know if it'll happen. But it is interesting, some of the things that he told me about Hong Kong, and I'm not sure what all I can say, what I can't say about it for whatever reason, but I don't want to disclose who it is and give out any detail that it may give it away. So, but yeah. Okay. So back to this, this Asian cult, this just Chinese cult. So I don't know how to pronounce it.
Falun Gong.
Falun Gong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so let's run with this, cause I interrupted the shit out of you.
Oh, no worries, man. I mean, well, basically they have like a 200-acre compound in upstate New York. Li Hongzhi, their leader, like I said, is gone, and he's given speeches at to the staff of NTD, New Tang Dynasty, and the Epoch Times, where he gives them their marching orders essentially. Now, the Epoch Times more recently has said, "Oh no, we're not involved with Falun Gong at all," and I believe that I'd check this, but I think that they run stories about organ harvesting and persecution of Falun Gong, basically. But the whole reason I got into this, Tommy, was because I watched Tim Pool all the time. I used to, and there was a period of time, last summer especially when this was going on, I was watching him a lot through the coronavirus stuff, and he had Luke Rudkowski on, whom I really like. Luke Rudkowski, like, don't get me wrong, I like him. I enjoyed Tim Pool's content. Tim has been platforming a lot of really great libertarians. But I'm just so suspicious of this anti-China narrative, and that's what set me off. Is there was one week he talked about China like every single night on his Timcast IRL, and my warning bells went off. And the reason why I did is because I was working on a documentary about COVID, and I was researching war atrocity propaganda during World War I. And that's what made me think about this, because I was listening to him and I was like, holy shit, this is World War I atrocity propaganda.
Yeah, babies on bayonets.
Exactly, man. Yeah. So I decided to look into it, and I found that there's stuff. Basically, the entire mainstream media is lined up parroting the same narrative. And Tim Pool is, Dave Rubin has said things about this. Bill Maher has, some of the other stupid late night comedians, every single news outlet in the mainstream.
Well, it's gone as far as Joe Biden is taking questions about it.
he took questions about it at that Milwaukee town hall, and that's what pissed everybody off. Mike Pompeo made a statement on the last day of Donald Trump's presidency.
I just saw that Pompeo made a statement today about it.
Oh, did he? What did he say?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't listen to the video, but I did see that he said something. Yeah. He's also accusing Russia of the hacks on the meat packing plant and the oil pipeline.
Of course he is. So, yeah.
Because it wasn't Russia when he was in the administration, but now that he's out of the administration, Russia. Yeah, we got to keep it going.
Well, I mean, it's like the Trump administration and the Biden administration's foreign policy is just, Corbett had a good episode about this. He called it precedent Trump. It's the fact that Donald Trump is basically just like any other president, and anyone thinking that he was actually something different. Now, whether that's because Trump couldn't help it, I don't know. But I defer to Corbett's content in that episode. But I mean, man, yeah. So everyone is aligned on this issue. All the mainstream is aligned on this issue, and it makes me wonder just whether Tim Pool and Luke Rudkowski specifically, whether they have been swept up in this, whether they have been negligent and haven't done their due diligence on it, or whether they're compromised in some way. And the most likely explanation is just that they got lazy, they didn't look into it. But in a way, that's just as bad as being compromised, because they pride themselves on integrity and journalism, and they really should get their shit straight. They should look into it. For the amount of hours that they've covered this subject, they should look into anyone saying otherwise and evaluate it.
I know Luke, he's pointed out a lot of the lies that got us into wars over the past.
He has.
So I'm actually shocked that he doesn't stop Tim and say, hold on, are we sure this is actually what's going on?
Yes, I am too, man. I am too.
Yeah, because that would be, I know he models himself as an ANCAP. Yeah. That's your first responsibility, man. That's the question. Like, hold on. Why is every mainstream outlet, whether it's the left or the right, putting out the same type of propaganda?
Yeah.
When they agree on shit, that's when you get the worst shit. So,
right.
So.
But I mean, dude, even Reason Magazine is talking about this. Reason hasn't been the worst, but they are, going along with this whole. They play the dark, dramatic music, and then they show the pictures, the satellite images. They do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
for less than a cup of coffee a day, you can feed this village.
Yeah, man. So in a way, I feel like I have to apologize to my listeners, because I feel like that's all I've covered on my podcast and my show for the last little bit. I've just gotten obsessed about this.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, and there's more, dude. There's even more. Is that...
Go, man. I'll sit here and listen to you.
Scott Horton interviewed the great Eric Margulies way back in the day. It was a while ago, and Eric Margulies told Scott Horton that there were CIA training facilities in Afghanistan around maybe prior to 2001. I'm not clear on the time, but my links are in this article. But Eric Margulies told Scott that basically there were CIA facilities training Uyghur Muslims to be terrorists.
I did hear about this. Yes, I heard that episode.
And Scott has said that, he interviewed Gareth Porter and talked about that. He's interviewed several people about this issue and has talked about that. So there's that connection to it. But Colonel Larry Wilkerson said essentially Scott interviewed him in March or April, I think it was. And Larry had basically, he was saying, we all know that a bunch of Uyghur terrorists were trained, and they traveled through Turkey to participate in Syria. So they were fighting on the side of al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria. And there were a lot of them. And that Turkey was maybe supplying some of the training there. Well, since that has kind of toned down a bit, all these fighters are returning back to Xinjiang, and they're doing it through Turkey. And Larry Wilkerson has heard through some official sources off the record that they are being aided possibly by certain elements, certain special interests back through Afghanistan, returning to Xinjiang. And that he said basically they're not going back to Xinjiang to bake cake, is what he said. And so I'd encourage everyone to listen to that, to get his words from his mouth.
So the implication is that they went to be radicalized, and now they turn around and go back to commit terrorist attacks in China. That's kind of the implication.
Yeah.
But it's very likely also that these are Sunnis that feel some kind of camaraderie with the Sunnis of Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra, and are just joining their brethren to fight invaders that have invaded these countries. Kind of like we know that there are American citizens that went and joined the White Helmets, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
There were French, American, British citizens that joined the Spanish Revolution, right? So sometimes people do voluntarily go and join other fighting forces.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. And I don't know whether or not Uyghurs are Sunnis. I didn't look into that part of it. My point with that is to illustrate
if they were going in training with Al-Qaeda, I'm just assuming.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah. But I guess my whole point with illustrating that connection is to say that the U.S. State Department is involved with Uyghurs in one capacity or another, whether it's Uyghur terrorists or whether it's regular Uyghurs. But it makes it more likely that the U.S. State Department has a hand in this narrative of the Uyghur genocide.
Right. And
I think it very well could just be, maybe it's more mundane than that. Maybe it's just that there are Uyghurs in Xinjiang. You know, the Chinese Communist Party is taking them and doing this ethnic cleansing that we talked about earlier. It's not a genocide. However, we have mainstream Western media outlets and this other movement that I didn't mention before called Autojurt, which is a Kazakh organization that was going through Xinjiang and was hooking up Uyghurs with the mainstream media in the West to get their testimonies on camera and distribute it throughout the world, the Western world. Mm-hmm. It could just be that these people who are they're not in touch with their family. The Chinese government has taken their family and put them through these education camps, not to be exterminated, but just to be reprogrammed. That the media is getting a hold of them and turning it into a puff piece for their own purposes.
Well, right. I mean, it makes you think of the end of 1984, whenever he's going through the re-education camp.
Yeah.
Like, the point was not to extinguish him. The point was get him to submit, right?
Right.
The future looks like a boot on the face of humanity forever.
Yeah.
You know? And so they didn't bring him to the facilities to kill him. They brought him to the facilities to kill his individuality.
Right.
Right? To kill his old self. To, like you said earlier, assimilate him into the prevailing culture.
Right. And he loved Big Brother.
Right. Yeah. They turned him into a machine. So that is ultimately, when you look at these indoctrination camps, these re-education camps, that's ultimately what they're trying to do. Like, ultimately. Now, it doesn't mean that's what they're doing. This is not, but my point is, it's not a genocide based upon the ethnicity, like the Jews in the Holocaust. Whereas, like, the whole point of that, of putting them in camps, was to kill these people. Whereas this, it sounds much more like the 1984 vision of, like you said, reprogramming.
Yeah.
Them to be a state actor.
Yeah. another thing is, I mean, if you take the Chinese government at their word, this is a social program that is to help. It's like a welfare program in a sense, is that it's job training, it's vocational training. That's what they say it is. You know, it's to combat radicalization of terrorists, to prevent terrorism, but also to take Uyghurs and to give them vocational training and release them so that they will be, you know, more integrated into society. So, you know, I'm sure the truth is a mix of they're absolutely brainwashing these people, and it's a mix of what the Chinese government is saying. Oh, we're just giving them vocational training. You know, I'm sure it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm tempted to quote Kim Jong-un here and say, we don't have concentration camps because we don't call them that.
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know, and again, it's not that I don't think that the Chinese government is capable of atrocities. I mean, obviously,
they for sure are. Yep.
You know, I believe that. It's just that we have seen so many lies, like World War I, World War II, like all this was the Gulf of Tonkin. You know, the babies in incubators.
Yeah.
We've seen it over and over. Weapons of mass destruction. It's just over and over and over. It's like, no, man, I don't know, dude. I don't know. And then there's this whole, now we're in this age of deep fakes. They can fake anything. They can make anything look like they want it to look. For whatever reason, they want it to look like that. And so it's really, really difficult to believe the boy that cried wolf when there's actually a wolf. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this could be the one time they're telling the truth. But what's going to make me believe that?
For me, I think it would be pictures of mass graves or something, you know, as bad as it sounds.
Yeah, but they could just pull the mass graves out of India.
Yeah,
you know,
you're right. Yeah.
Where the tradition is to have a mass grave.
You're absolutely right. And I'm thinking of the Duma chemical attacks, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I don't know. I had the same thought, man, like about the situation in Yemen. You know, who's to say that these BBC articles or, you know, these pictures of starving babies, who's to say that that's not all ginned up and fake?
Yeah.
So I thought long and hard about that, but I mean, it just seems like it's much more credible coming from Yemen.
Yeah.
There's obviously,
I mean, there's just so much, like, it's just so hard to separate the wheat from the chaff anymore.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like, okay, like, I'll take you at face value. I'm gonna try to figure out, like, what's going on, what the other people are saying. I'm going to try to figure it out, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to believe anybody completely.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not confident enough to argue with anybody on the subject, except we absolutely have to avoid a hot war at all costs.
Right.
Because that is, I mean, you're talking humanity in totality, you know, like the totality of humanity would be completely wiped out if the U.S. went to war with China.
Right.
Not to mention if you ended up with like Axis powers like you did in World War II, where you have, you know, the U.S. and Australia and Britain and whoever, and Canada, whoever, versus Iran, Russia, and China. You know, like, how devastating to humanity would a war like that be?
Oh,
and that's what I'm looking at. Like, wow, so China's trading with Iran and Russia. And so it's like, okay, wait, are they like behind the scenes, you know, making some kind of alliance in case there is an attack? You know? Well,
and so Biden met with Putin today, and I think they were talking. I didn't get a chance to really look at what was said. In the past, Putin has made comments saying that a military alliance with China would, quote, make sense. But apparently Putin told Biden today that his friendliness towards China is just business. It's like, oh, I'm not fucking that bitch over there. We're just friends, man.
Right.
So and I don't know, like China and Russia have historically had a very complicated relationship with each other. So it's hard to tell, but I can tell you one thing for sure is that this renewed great power competition, which is what, our new foreign policy is since Mattis declared it back in the Trump administration, is certainly driving China and Russia closer together.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. It just makes sense.
Yeah, they're driving China and Russia closer together. And Iran seems to be a link between both of them, where they're both friendly with Iran. And it's like, okay, I just don't know what they, I read the book. This is a big new Brzezinski wrote, The Grand Chessboard.
Yeah. Bless you. Bless you all.
And I was just like, I'm reading it and I'm going, how did you ever think this was going to work? Like, what made you even think that you were going to be able to manipulate every world leader in such a way that you were going to create this hegemonic world system? Like, it's just, it's one of those things that blows my mind. Maybe it's because I've read Bastiat, I've read Hayek, and I'm like, yeah, there's like all these different incentive problems, knowledge problems. There's all this other stuff going on that you just you can't possibly guess. You can try to collect intelligence to the best of your ability, but you're never going to be able. You can't do it in your own country, let alone with foreign leaders who feel like they have the right to rule over other people.
Right.
You just can't do it. What makes you think that Putin is going to be honest to the president? You know what I'm saying? Whether the president's Trump or Biden, what makes you think that there's going to be an honest conversation being had? I just don't buy it. And it's not that I think one is better than the other. I just think they're all out for their own self-interest. And they're never going to be completely upfront with each other. It's like having a cartel of fucking railroads backbiting and fucking trying to undercut each other. Like, you're always going to have that one competitor is trying to figure out an advantage. No matter if you've cartelized or not. Rothbard wrote about this in the progressive era. So it's just, I don't know, man. I don't necessarily buy the American rhetoric, but I certainly don't buy the Chinese rhetoric. I don't buy the Russian rhetoric. I just think they're all fucking lying to all of us, and it's something completely different, And I don't know what that different is, and I don't know if we'll ever know what that different is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, probably not. It's hard. I think by design, it's hard to navigate because you have to have a very nuanced opinion on these things. You have to be very careful about, what narrative you're trying to put forward. And, my opinion on this issue is a little more nuanced than it was when I first started writing about, because there's a whole website called the Xinjiang Victims Database. And I had a Twitter exchange with its, I think his name is Gene Boonin, the organizer behind it. And what they try and do is they go across Xinjiang and they get testimony and evidence from a whole bunch of these Uyghurs. And I was too dismissive of it, that there's something going on there.
Right.
So,
it's just like, what is it? Yeah. What are we looking at? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's really hard to, I mean, I find it enjoyable to kind of bounce these ideas off of other people and have these conversations, but you're not going to come away from this podcast with a definite idea of what is happening, because if anything, it confuses me even more because I start thinking about it and my mind starts reeling and I'm like, okay, maybe this, maybe that. Like, can you imagine, putting a dementia patient in the same room as a former KGB agent and not expecting that KGB agent to fucking be able to manipulate him any which way he wants to.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I heard it was Tim Pool today. He said this was an embarrassment for all of us, and I was like, no, it's not. It doesn't embarrass me at all. The motherfucker shouldn't even be there.
Right.
You know, I didn't vote for any of these people. You
Right.
know, like,
Why
embarrassment. That's an embarrassment for the people that voted for that son of a bitch, but not for me. I don't give a fuck.
Why the fuck does he represent me?
Has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. I don't give a goddamn. You know.
The other thing I wanted to mention, dude, is that it's like everyone's walking around being like, oh, well, no one wants a fucking war with China. No one wants a fucking war with Russia. But here, let's just fly our B-52 nuclear capable bombers, you know, over
in their airspace. Yeah.
In their airspace. Let's send these spy drones off the China coast. Let's send this strike force group through the Taiwan Strait, or let's destroy these guided missile destroyers into the Black Sea. But no one wants war.
Yeah, that's like being at the bar with your little like fucking drunk friend who has a Napoleon complex. Yeah. He walks up to the biggest dude he can find and he pushes him and calls him a bitch. He's like, I don't want to fight, bro. Hey, fuck you, dude. You just push that dude. You should get your ass stomped.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's hard too because there's all these libertarians, you know, in the Twitter world. They tweet memes about, you know, joking about the disappearing Uyghurs or something, or making some kind of point about that. And it's like, it's hard for me because on the one hand, it's like, okay, you know, there are bad things happening, but every time you do that, you give the impression like this definition of genocide, right? When someone says genocide, you don't think about ethnic cleansing. You think about crematoriums and gas chambers and mass graves. You don't think about, you know, trying to influence someone's culture. And in the part of the problem with that is that the Geneva Convention of, I think, 1948, it could convict a ham sandwich of genocide. The definition is so broad, and I think it's by design. You know, it could be by design.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess the death of Mama Cass was kind of a genocide, but you know, she weighed as much as a million people.
Okay, well, one last thing about the China genocide. It's all coming to me in pieces, but so basically this New Lines report that came out a few months ago, I think in March, and everyone and their mom in the mainstream media was saying that it was definitive proof by an independent review of a think tank declaring the Chinese genocide is happening and defining it and saying it's genocide under the Geneva Code, and we can prove it beyond to clear and convincing evidence, almost beyond a reasonable doubt. When the burden of proof, I believe, is a preponderance of the evidence, so it's more likely than not under the Geneva Convention.
Right.
This New Lines Institute is funded by a sham defunct university. It's a for-private college, Fairfax University of America. It's this for-profit joke university that had its credentials. It's being I don't know if they've been pulled, but it's being reviewed to be pulled by the FDA or the what's the Educational Bureau, the Alphabet Soup Agency.
EPA? Department of Education.
Yeah, it's having its credentials pulled by the Department of Education. They have like 25 students here, and that's who's funding this New Lines Institute research. It's bullshit. Yeah, you can't write this shit. You can't make it up.
Well, and you know, whenever I look at that, and I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I don't know if this ever came to an end or they ever determined, but what was it? Something like there's 4 stages of genocide or something like that. 5 stages, 6 stages, something like that. There's a certain amount of stages to a genocide. As far as the Nuremberg
It sounds
Code.
familiar. Yeah.
And they had dedicated South Africa on like stage 4 of 6 or something like that in like 2014, and the UN was supposed to investigate, and I've never heard whether or not they ever came to a conclusion on that. It's just so when they start throwing around these terms like genocide and getting all legalese on you, you have to beware that a lot of it is to pacify you, and they're really not doing anything, right? So that's why, like, so many people are so up in arms about the investigation on the January 6th riot. And I'm like, okay, I know there's been like, what, 300-400 people arrested, and a lot of them been put in solitary confinement. But what really are they trying to accomplish there? Are they just trying to pacify the left, or is there something really going on, right? It's like it's hard to know with the state, the way that they use rhetoric, the way they use propaganda, the way that they filter out information into the public eye. It's really hard to get a grip on what they are trying to accomplish with the information that we are allowed to consume. Like I said, man, it makes it really hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. You're trying to go through this stuff and try to figure out, like, are my kids in danger? Are we in danger of a damn, nuclear holocaust? Like, what's going on? And I don't know if there's any way we're ever going to know,
Yeah. And, thankfully we have people like Dave DeCamp and Rick Rosoff and Connor Freeman. And I hesitate to name names because I'll forget people, but, Eric Garris, one of those names, everyone at antiwar.com and, Libertarian Institute. Well, we have people who will look at this and digest it for us and, help us down that path. But, then again, you need 30 minutes a day to go through all the articles you can on antiwar.com.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's true. And how much are you capable of digesting and really understanding, It's just, and it does, it gets tiring and overwhelming. This 24-hour news cycle, it just blows your mind sometimes. Yeah. You're like, Jesus Christ, I can't. It makes you wonder, was this much shit always going on and nobody knew it?
Right? I think about that a lot, man. I think about that a lot.
It's just fucking mind-blowing.
Back then, just think about this, like, oh, there's 3 newspapers in town. That's all I can get. Otherwise, I don't know, I'm going to rely on telegrams or something, or my correspondence via letter with my buddy in New York or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, holy shit, was there always this much happening and nobody knew? And it wasn't until the invent of the fucking internet that all of a sudden everybody, holy shit, the world's on fire.
I have this, my parents, they're conservatives, and they're like, they, believe in liberty in the sense of that, the way conservatives do, they bought me these socks.
So not at all.
No. Okay. Well, no, but you know what I mean?
Like, my dad's a conservative. I understand.
But does he believe in liberty in some abstract?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's, I mean, I guess if I were going to put him on a scale, I would put him somewhere between Buchanan and Ron Paul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, somewhere in that area. Like kind of paleo-con-ish. But yeah, minarchist for sure, but yeah. But he's listening. I mean, he pays attention to all conservative media. It's all, I mean, Andrew Wilkow and Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly. It's all that. That's what he's paying attention to. Yeah.
Well, I have these socks. They bought me these socks because they went to Monticello, where Thomas Jefferson. I think that's Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
And there's a quote on the socks that says, "I could not live without books," or something like that. And I always think about that as like, well, no wonder these fuckers were so smart. There's nothing to do
Yeah.
except read.
Yeah.
You couldn't watch TV or like play video games or, you know, jack off the internet porn or something.
Right.
You just read books.
Yeah. You ought to get them some socks made with with that quote by Jefferson that says, "I would prefer the inconvenience of too much liberty than too much government."
Yeah. Dude, they'd be the problem is that they'd be totally into that, but then still not be anarchists. You know?
I still wouldn't get it.
Right. Yeah. No, I gotta give them credit though, because they're getting there. You know, my mom is subscribed to Tom Wood's newsletter. You know, she follows the Mises Institute, so we're getting there. We're getting someplace.
My mom listens to this shit show.
Yeah.
My mom listens to Scott Horton and Pete and me, and she listens to a lot of podcasts.
That's awesome.
But my dad, he can't let go of his old ways, man.
Yeah.
He texted me today, like I said, and I think I upset him whenever I was like, yeah, motherfuckers think if they just keep voting harder, but when has any of these people ever been held accountable for anything? No matter how many elections go by, nobody's ever held accountable for anything. And he just stopped commenting. He was just like, okay, I'm done.
Dude, another.
Sorry, Dad.
I do that all the time. That's why I got my podcast, is so I can spew it out here and not shit in their ears all the time, every day. Like,
hey man, you don't want none, don't start none. Because I wasn't saying nothing.
Well, they've learned not to bring stuff up around me because I'm like a dog with a bone. You know, it's got to be right all the time. But the way it is.
But you know, that's just part of it. That's being a libertarian.
Yeah. Yep.
You got to be right.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you know? You're not a real libertarian.
Right. Well, I'm not. I've said friendly things about the Mises Institute, so I'm not a real libertarian.
Yeah. I've said friendly things about the Mises Institute, but I refuse to join the party. I'm just not doing it.
No, that's cool.
Have you seen the damn? I'm probably going to cut the recording off before this, but have you seen the damn what you call it? The Twitter account for Libertarian Party of Texas?
Not Texas. I was following when Jeremy Kauffman was doing his tweets from the New Hampshire party.
Nah, the Libertarian Party of Texas is probably the most blue-pilled fucking Libertarian Party affiliate in the entire country.
Really?
It's like, why would I drive
Texas.
6 hours to Austin for meetings to deal with these fucking people?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm just not doing it. I got things I could be doing at the house. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to use my day doing that.
Yeah. Fuck that.
But you got, what else you got on China? Let's wrap this up on China.
Yeah, well, I mean, other than the confrontations, I mean, the other week there were a bunch of U.S. diplomats that flew to they flew to Taiwan to distribute a bunch of COVID-19 vaccines, and they did it in like a military C-40, like the big cargo plane. But it was a military plane, and so that pissed off China, and then China started doing these amphibious, like Omaha Beach style landing drills very close to Taiwan in a clear signal, like we could invade the shit out of Taiwan if we wanted to.
Wait, you're telling me they got fucking diplomats on a C-140?
Yeah.
No way.
I don't know if it was a C-140, sorry, but it was a military plane.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, like, I used to jump out of those fucking things. That is
I
like
forgot.
that is one of the most uncomfortable rides in the world.
I forgot that you were in the military, man.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot more
for a short period. Yes, I was. Yeah. They kicked me out. I wonder why.
Have you ever done an episode about your bio, your backstory?
I've talked about it a little bit, but I've never done a full episode. I don't find myself that interesting.
Well, I do. God damn it.
Well, you can
Dude,
interview
Tommy,
me about it.
You're one of the most interesting people I've met.
You can ask me about it. I don't know. I've never really sat down and like tried to talk about it. I have troubles writing a short paragraph bio for fucking Harley to put up on the Institute.
That is hard.
He's like, "Can you send me a bio?" And I'm like, "Here's a sentence."
Yo.
I hate power. I'm fighting power. Fuck them.
Dude, I love the way that Scott puts it is, here's something for your oppositional defiant disorder against against the state. Buy a bumper sticker from the bumpersticker.com, motherfucker.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, that's me.
You know what? If I was saying this at Schilderberg, if I ever put a bumper sticker on my fucking car, it's going to be the 500 Club. So the police leave me the fuck alone.
Fuck
I
yeah.
ain't putting no goddamn anti-fucking government sticker on my truck and become a target.
Yeah.
Like, why the hell would I put the target on my own back?
and see, I thought about this too. My dad was like, you know, son, when I was 23 years old, I had a car and I put a custom license plate on it. And then the same fucking cop pulled me over 5 times in 3 months because he knew what fucking car was mine.
Yep.
So that's how it's done.
Yep.
So,
be the gray man.
Exactly.
Blend in as much as possible, man.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Well, yeah, so I mean that's all I got for today on China. You know, I could say China's a paper tiger, but I want to revisit that claim. You know, Justin Raimondo talked, you know, and
It could be an outdated claim by now. It may have been true when he wrote it, and not true today.
He wrote it in 2018 or 2019. I think I forgot when he passed away, but
he just died. It feels like forever ago that he died.
Yeah, it's too bad, man. But you know, David Stockman is still around. He says that China's a paper tiger about this real estate bubble of like gargantuan size. So who fucking knows? I got to look into that. But Corbett was also saying that, you know, China's funded by U.S. banking interests, and that's what's behind their rise to world power.
And armed by the U.S.
Yeah. So I got to look more into that. You know, I've been talking to Kyle about it. The great Kyle Ancelone, who always keeps me grounded. And, you know, he says the truth is probably a bit more gray, but, you know, you got to do some more research and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, no, Kyle's great. He does some great work on conflicts of interest. If anybody wants any foreign policy, Scott Horton's show and Kyle Ancelone, I mean,
and
it's great. At the Libertarian Institute, we have like 2 of the best foreign policy guys.
Yeah, and Will Porter too.
Yeah, Will's great too.
And dude, have you ever talked to Will about his music tastes?
Yes. When we used to chat back and forth on Facebook all the time. Yeah.
Dude, I love Will. I can't wait. I can't wait to meet Kyle and Will in person.
I know.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get Will and I have been talking about him coming on my podcast since 2019, and it's just never happened. And I tweeted him like 2 months ago. I was like, dude, you know, we never did get you on my podcast. He goes, we got to make that happen. I love your podcast. And I was like, I know, like, that's fucking crazy. And here we are 2 months later, still haven't had him on. I gotta fix this.
Dude, I think I've been trying for maybe 6 or 7 months. No, I've been on with Will a couple times though. We did, but it's been a while. I know, you know, his writing with RT keeps him really busy. Yeah. So, you know, I'm sure.
Well, and when I met him, I think I met him a month before he started writing for RT.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've known Kyle. Kyle was one of the first people I met in the Liberty podcasting sphere. It was like 2014 or 2015. So I told Scott that. I don't know. You were there when I told Scott that. I was like, dude, I've known Kyle since Kyle started his show. That motherfucker works his fingers to the bone, man. Yeah. He would write these his news roundups. He did that way back. I mean, forever ago. He would do it for nothing, man.
Yeah.
Every morning he'd get up at like 6 in the morning, 5:30, and read all these articles and put it out on the website for nothing.
Yeah. I'm glad he's starting to get people are starting to notice him.
Yeah, me too.
I remember when you popped up on the website, I was like, I got texted Pete. I was like, what's this Liberty Weekly thing?
Yeah, it was like a lot of people think I'm some egg-headed lawyer, man, but I'm a metalhead, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and I asked Pete, I was like, what? Wait, it was the first, it may not even been when you first popped up, but it was the first time I noticed you.
Yeah.
Like noticed Liberty Weekly on the podcast, on the website. And I was like, what is this? And Pete's like, I don't know. And I was like, I guess I'm going to have to ask Scott. Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm out here on the road. I can't keep up with all this stuff. I wish I could write more. I'm hoping going home and being home every night, I'm going to be able to write more.
Dude,
hopefully at least knock out something every other week or something like that. I don't know.
The thing that Kyle tells me is that when new writers come on, it takes them a while to come out with a new piece. But once you do 3 or 4, then they start going faster. Like me, it took me a whole month to write, my first piece.
Well, it takes me forever to write because I'm so contemplative and I'm always driving. So it's like I get an hour at night to sit down and like put my thoughts on paper. Yeah. And I'll be driving and I'll be putting some notes on my phone or something. Yeah. And then I'll have like half an article written, and it's like 3 weeks it's taken me to write, like 1,500 words, like, and get it to where I'm like, okay, that's tight. I like that. And then I'm working on the second half, and then it's like, kind of like, it's just outdated by then. And I'm like, all right, like, whatever.
Oh yeah. I don't know when to stop researching is part of my problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's that libertarian thing about I always wanted to be right. It's
yeah.
Like, God damn it. I got to be, So.
Well, the first article I ever wrote for the Institute was sandwiched between Lou Rockwell and Ron Paul. And I was like, cool I don't fucking belong here. Why are you publishing my shit the same day you publish Ron Paul and Lou Rockwell? Like, what the fuck, dude?
Isn't that a cool ass feeling though?
It's that is like so intimidating. I'm like, it's going to be like the way I described it. It's like Lou Rockwell, some schmuck, Ron Paul, like, it's like, what? Like, I don't belong here,
Dude, I got to think that I told Scott this, but my grandpa was a Bircher. He was, I don't think he was an OG John Bircher, but he was active in the Wisconsin John Bircher shit.
Yeah.
And he was woke on the Fed, all War and Peace. He wrote op-eds in the local newspaper against Iraq War 1. I have the clipping. It's like one of my most prized possessions. Dude, awesome. I gotta hope that he's looking down on me like I'm just continuing that narrative.
Yeah.
That
great.
legacy. But that's what drives me, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I got these 5 kids and a granddaughter, so, I got to do something.
How old's your granddaughter?
She's a year and a half.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a cutie. Unfortunately, I've only gotten to be around her like twice. But
yeah.
That's just part of being out here on the road. And,
yeah, man.
Kids living in Houston and yada yada.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I'm gonna get
yeah, well,
off here,
brother.
man.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we could chat again.
Yeah, no doubt, man. We're gonna definitely do this some more.
Hell yeah.
We'll talk about all kinds of shit.
You wanna be a hero, instead you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you waved just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone. They demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Last we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel. Seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumbed us down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names. It seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. Change a channel, it's time to set things right. Make them all rot with fear in their beds at night. Devour all their worthless souls and sacrificial right, just like we should. Cause this world needs a cleansing to burn away the shame and destroy all the remnants of those who are to blame. Stack them up like cordwood, watch them sizzle on the flames for good. Well, as we all just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood, our liberty will never be until our right to freedom is understood.